The girl no one wanted. The marketplace was loud. Metal stalls clanged. Creatures shouted. Lights blinked in strange colors. It was a trading hub in the middle of space, and today, slaves were being sold. At the very end of the row, where garbage was thrown and broken machines were left to rust, sat a small cage. Inside it, curled in a corner, was an alien girl. She was thin, her skin pale blue, and her long silver hair hung over her face like a curtain. Her name was Ilari, but no one cared. The auctioneer waved his hand. "No one wants this one? Half price." "No, 1 credit? Come on, she eats almost nothing," people laughed. One alien threw a rotten fruit at her. "Even for free, she's worthless." Ilari didn't flinch. She had heard worse. She had been here for days, maybe weeks. No one bought her. No one spoke to her. Her kind had once lived on a peaceful planet. But their world had been destroyed, and now they were sold like trash. Then a man stepped out of the crowd. He wasn't tall. He wasn't loud, just a human. His clothes were dusty, his eyes tired. He looked at the girl. Not with hate, not with disgust. Just silence. "What about her?" he asked. The auctioneer rolled his eyes. "That thing, 1 credit. You buying, or wasting my time, human?" He didn't answer right away. He walked closer to the cage. Ilari slowly looked up. Her eyes were silver, bright, and full of fear. But there was something else in them too. Something sad. Something ancient. "What's your name?" the man asked softly. She didn't speak. "She doesn't talk," the seller said. "Probably dumb or broken. We don't know. Don't care." The man sighed. Then he reached into his pocket and tossed 1 credit coin into the seller's hand. "Sold?" The auctioneer laughed. "To the soft-hearted idiot." The man opened the cage. Ilari didn't move. He knelt down. "You're free to run," he whispered. "Or come with me. Up to you." She stared at him. Then slowly she crawled out. They walked to the human ship, a small freighter parked nearby. No one spoke. Inside the ship, the man gave her water and food. Ilari ate fast. Too fast. Like she hadn't eaten in days. The crew looked at her, with surprise and whispers. "Why'd you bring that thing aboard, Captain?" one of them asked. "She's not a thing," the man replied. "She's a person. She's an alien. So are we to her." No one argued again. But the silence was heavy. Later, the man sat in his room checking a map of the next trade route. There was a soft knock on his door. It opened slowly. Ilari stepped inside, her head low. "Thank you," she said in a quiet voice. He looked up, surprised. "You talk?" She nodded slowly. "Only when safe." "What's your name?" "Ilari." "I'm Mason." There was a pause. Then she looked at him carefully. "Why did you buy me?" she asked. Mason leaned back in his chair. "I don't know. Maybe because no one else did." Ilari stared at the floor. Her hands were shaking. "I am not useful. I cannot fight. I cannot fly a ship. You wasted your credit." Mason stood up and walked over. He didn't touch her. He just looked her in the eyes. "You are alive. That's enough." Tears rolled down her cheeks. That night, as the ship drifted through space, Ilari sat by the small window in her room. For the first time in years, she wasn't locked in a cage. She wasn't chained. She wasn't ignored. She remembered her homeworld. The tall silver trees, the soft music of the wind. She remembered her parents, now gone. She had lost everything. But now, maybe she had something again. Not much, but something. A chance. The human's decision. The stars outside the ship looked quiet, but inside, the silence felt tense. Mason sat in the command chair of his freighter, the Rust Wing, staring at the galaxy map on the screen. His crew stood behind him, watching, waiting. She was in the back of the room, the alien girl. Ilari. No one spoke to her. No one stood near her. She stood alone. Again. Finally, the pilot, a tall insectoid named Rek, spoke up. "Captain, why? Is she still here?" Mason didn't turn around. "She's crew now." Gasps, whispering. A second crewmate, Juno, crossed her arms. "She's a stray, Captain. You picked her up like junk. You don't even know what she is." "I know she's not a threat," Mason replied calmly. "That's enough." "Until she sabotages the engines," Rek muttered, "or poisons our air." "She won't," Mason said, still not turning around. "She's scared, not stupid." Ilari didn't say anything. Her silver eyes looked at the floor. Later, Mason sat, alone in the small kitchen room, sipping thick coffee from a cracked metal cup. He heard footsteps, soft, light. He didn't have to turn around to know it was her. "You didn't have to protect me," she said softly. "I didn't do it to be a hero," Mason replied. "Then, why?" He looked at her. "Because I was once the one no one wanted to." Ilari tilted her head. "You were a slave?" "No," Mason chuckled darkly. "But close enough. I was born on Earth, poor zone, food stamps, junk jobs. I used to steal bread to survive." Ilari sat across from him slowly, hands in her lap. "Then you understand?" Mason nodded. "That's why I know you don't belong in a cage, and you don't owe anyone your life just because they let you out of one." In the storage bay, Rek whispered to Juno. "She's dangerous. The captain's being emotional. We should act before it's too late." Juno narrowed her eyes. "We'll keep watch. One sign of trouble and we throw her out." That night, Ilari lay on the bunk Mason had given her. It was hard, but better than any floor she'd slept on in years. She stared at the ceiling, thinking. Humans were strange, cruel sometimes. But Mason was different. He didn't treat her like a slave, not like property, not even like a guest. He treated her like a person. She touched the collar around her neck. It no longer worked. It was deactivated. But she could still feel the weight. She whispered to herself, "Do not trust. Do not hope. Just survive." But part of her wanted to believe. The next morning, the ship's alarm blared. Warning: system failure. Engine room breach. Mason ran to the control panel. "Report," Juno shouted. "Main power's unstable. Reactor readings are spiking," Mason cursed. "We just left the trade station. What the hell?" Then from the shadows, Ilari stepped forward. She looked calm, but her eyes were sharp. "I can help," Juno laughed. "You? Help?" Ilari walked to the console. "The power signal shows pulse disruption. That only happens when the reactor coolant is blocked." Mason blinked. "How do you know that?" "I've seen it before in the mines. The same tech was used on my world." Mason didn't hesitate. "Juno, take her to engineering. Let her guide you." Juno hesitated. "Captain, that's an order." 10 minutes later, the power returned. The ship was safe. The crew stood silent, watching the alien girl walk back into the room. She didn't smile. She didn't brag. She just nodded once. Mason looked at Juno. "Still think she's a threat?" Juno looked down. "Maybe. Not." That night, Mason found Ilari sitting by the observation window again. "You saved the ship," he said. "I didn't want to die with it," she said flatly. He smiled. "You could have let it break down, could have run. But you didn't." Ilari looked at him. "I didn't want you to die." That made Mason pause. In that moment, a small part of Ilari's wall cracked. Whispers in the dark. The corridors of the Rust Wing were dim and silent. A few overhead lights flickered. The hum of the engines echoed through the metal walls. But something else was in the air. Something colder. Ilari felt it. She walked slowly toward the storage bay, careful not to make noise. She couldn't sleep. Something inside her chest felt heavy, like eyes were always watching, like the walls were whispering. Behind her, a door clicked quietly. But when she turned, nothing. In the control room, Mason stared at the ship's logs. A small window blinked. Access attempt denied. He frowned. Who tried to override the reactor core lock? Another window popped up. Security override. Failed. Code tampered. Mason tapped the console. Then he picked up his comm. Juno. Wreck. Report to the briefing room. Now. When the two arrived, Mason didn't waste time. Someone tried to sabotage the reactor again. After Ilari fixed it. Juno folded her arms. And you think it's us? I don't know who it is, but someone doesn't want her here. Wreck hissed. She's a danger. You brought her aboard. This is your mess. No, Mason said, voice low. This is our ship, and someone is trying to break it from the inside. Ilari, meanwhile, had returned to her small bunk room. She stood in front of a mirror, one of the only things Mason had placed there for her. She looked at her reflection. Not the girl who was sold. Not the weak one anymore. Her silver eyes burned brighter now. And her posture was different. Stronger. But in her hand it was something strange. She picked it up from beneath her bed. It was a tool, one she hadn't seen before. Sharp. Hidden. It hadn't been there yesterday. Someone wants to frame me, she whispered. Later that night, Mason knocked. On her door. Come in, she said softly. He walked in and handed her a warm drink. Figured you'd be awake. She nodded. You trust me, don't you? I do. Then listen carefully. Ilari showed him the tool. Mason frowned. Where did you find this? Under my bed. His jaw clenched. They're trying to blame you. I know, she said, but why? I've done nothing wrong. That's the problem, Mason said. You're proving them wrong. Some people don't like that. In the engine room, Wreck leaned against the wall as Juno adjusted a vent. We shouldn't have pushed her, Juno said quietly. Wreck clicked his mandibles. She doesn't belong here. She's just acting sweet, but one day she'll turn. I don't know anymore, Juno said. She saved us. Mason believes in her. Wreck growled. Then he's weak. Juno looked up sharply. Say that again? But before Wreck could speak, something dropped from the ceiling, fast and hard. Thud. The lights blinked off, and when they came back on, Wreck was unconscious. A dark figure slipped into the shadows. Ilari jumped when the alarm rang. Intruder detected. Lower decks, Mason shouted orders. Seal off storage, lock engine room, everyone on alert. Ilari ran to the security feed. She saw it. A figure, not a crew member. Something else. Moving fast. Not human. What is that? She whispered. Mason turned to her. You recognize it? She narrowed her eyes. Yes, that is a night lurker. My people feared them. They follow our kind. They never forget a scent. Why would it be here? Because I am here. In the cargo hold, Juno dragged Wreck to safety. His breathing was weak but steady. Ilari entered behind her. Juno, she said carefully. You were wrong. I didn't bring danger to this ship. Danger followed me. Juno looked up, confused. What does it want? Me, Ilari whispered. They used to hunt my kind like sport. Now it knows I survived. It wants to finish the job. Mason stood, on the bridge. Then we fight. Ilari looked at him. You would fight a nightmare for me? No, Mason said. I'd fight with you. Ilari nodded slowly. Then teach me how. Her hidden talent. The Rustwing was no longer just a ship. It was a hunting ground. In the control room, the crew gathered in silence. The night lurker had entered through the docking hatch. It moved without sound. It could melt into shadows. It could kill without leaving a trace. Everyone was scared. Everyone. Except her. Ilari stood in the middle of the room, calm, too calm. Mason noticed. You've seen one of these before. She nodded. Not seen. Survived. Juno stared. How? No one survives a night lurker, even mercs don't face them alone. I didn't fight, Ilari said. I ran, hid, prayed. Mason stepped closer. But you're not running now. Ilari looked up at him. Her silver eyes glowed softly. I'm tired of running. Below deck, the lights flickered again. The air turned cold. The sound of metal, claws scraping the floor, echoed faintly. The creature was close. We have a plan, Mason said. But we need your help. Ilari looked unsure. I've never fought. You don't need to. You said it tracks by scent, right? Yes. Then, we'll use that. You'll draw it into the trap room. We've rigged the pressure vents to explode. If it steps in the center, we lock the doors and burn it. Burn it alive? She asked. It won't feel a thing. It's not like us. She swallowed hard. What if I fail? Mason placed a hand gently on her shoulder. Then we fail together. Ilari walked down the hallway alone. Every step echoed. She held her breath. Her heart pounded. Shadows shifted around her. She reached the trap room. The metal door hissed open. Cold air blew out. She stepped inside and waited. Back on the bridge, Mason whispered into his comm. She's in position. Any sign of it? Juno stared at the radar. No movement yet. Wait. Blip at corridor. 5. It's going to her. Mason clenched his jaw. Hold steady. Let it walk in. In the trap room, Ilari closed her eyes. Her ears twitched. Scrape. 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 It was here. She turned slowly and saw it, tall, black skin like armor, mouth wide with needle teeth, eyes like melted glass. It smiled and pounced. Now! Mason shouted. The door slammed shut. Boom! Flames roared. Metal shrieked. The entire room glowed orange. Juno shouted, Pressure stable! Containment holding. Mason ran toward the room. Smoke poured from the cracks. Ilari, he shouted. No answer. He opened the door and stopped. Out of the smoke, she walked, coughing, burnt sleeves, but alive. Behind her, the night lurkers. Body was on fire. Ilari didn't smile. She looked at Mason and said softly, I never knew I could be brave. Mason grinned. Now you know. Hours later, the crew patched the damage. Rek, still bruised, walked up to Ilari. You saved us. She didn't respond. You didn't have to. Not after how we treated you. Ilari finally looked up. That's why I did. Later that night, Mason found her staring at a glowing map of the stars. That thing followed me, she said. What if others do? Mason leaned against the wall. Then we fight them too. I don't want anyone else to die for me. You're not just you anymore, you're one of us now. Ilari looked at him, her voice trembled. No one's ever said that to me, and no one ever will again, Mason said. Because you belong here. In the silence of deep space, a single alien girl, once sold for nothing, had now saved an entire ship. But more was coming. She could feel it, because somewhere out there, someone else had learned she was still alive. The enemy returns a message blinked on the screen of the Rustwing's communication deck. Unmarked ship approaching, no response to hail. Mason stood still, eyes narrowing. That's not a traitor, and it's not lost. Ilari walked in. The moment she saw the shape of the ship on the screen, her skin turned pale. That ship, she whispered. I know it. Juno turned from her console. You sure? Ilari nodded slowly. They used to own me. The ship was black with rusted claws at the front like a monster's mouth. The symbol on its side, a broken eye with a chain, was burned into Ilari's memory. It belonged to the Black Ring, the slave cartel that destroyed her people. They want me back, she said softly. Or they want me dead. Mason looked at her. They're not taking either. The crew met in the main room. No one joked. No one whispered. Everyone listened. They're hailing us now, Juno said. No video. Just audio. Play it, Mason ordered. A low, cruel voice crackled through the speakers. Human ship, we tracked something of ours aboard. You have 30 minutes to surrender the property, or you all die. No names, no bargaining, just cold demands. Ilari stood beside Mason, fists clenched. They don't care about your crew, only me. That's where they made their mistake, Mason said. They think we'll hand you over. Freck growled, You saved this ship, we're not giving you up. The Rustwing was outgunned and out-armored, but it had one thing the Black Ring ship didn't expect, a crew that now believed in one alien girl. Mason paced the floor. They'll try to board, that's our chance. Chance for what? Juno asked. To end this, Mason said. We draw them inside, split their boarding team, and hit them from both ends. Ilari, if you're willing, we'll need you at the core. Ilari looked confused. Why me? You're small, fast, and you know their tech. You used to live in their ship corridors. Ilari hesitated, then nodded. I'll do it. The Black Ring ship sent a spike into the hull. The Rustwing shook as the boarding tunnel clamped down. Intruders detected. Sector 3, 5 masked raiders stormed in. Guns. Ready armor heavy. But the corridors were narrow and they didn't expect resistance. Juno dropped smoke bombs. Vreck roared from the shadows. The fight began. Ilari slipped through a side vent, crawling toward the old systems port near the engine. She reached the console. Her hands moved fast. Suddenly, alarm lights turned red on the enemy ship. What did you do? Mason asked through the comm. I rerouted their air vents, gave their ship a false oxygen leak warning. On the enemy ship, chaos broke out. They pulled back, thinking their own systems were crashing. That was Ilari's hidden talent, not just knowledge, but instinct. She didn't just remember things. She understood them. Mason and the crew drove the remaining raiders into the trap room, the same one they used for the night lurker. This time they didn't burn them. They sealed them in. Vreck grunted. They'll suffocate in an hour. Mason looked toward Ilari, now walking into the room, face calm. That's more than they gave her. The Black Ring ship tried to retreat. But Mason had one final surprise. He fired an EMP blast into their engines, crippling them. The cartel vessel floated powerless. Juno looked at the radar. They're done, we can leave. Mason turned to Ilari. Or we finish it. Ilari stepped forward. No. Let them drift. Let them feel what it's like to be powerless. That's the punishment they understand best. Later, as the stars moved silently past the Rustwing, Mason found Ilari alone again, this time not afraid. Just thinking. You didn't have to risk everything, he said. Yes, I did, she replied. Because this is the first place I've ever wanted to protect. You're more than a survivor now, he said. You're a fighter. She looked at him and smiled. No, I'm crew. But far away in the shadows of deep space and the Black Ring was not finished. And someone higher, someone far more powerful, had just learned her name. A name of honor. The Rustwing floated through quiet space. No battles, no alarms. For once, peace. Ilari stood on the ship's balcony, staring at the stars. Not as a slave. Not as cargo. She stood tall, her back straight, eyes calm. Behind her, Mason approached, holding something in his hand, a thin silver band. What's that? She asked. A name tag, he said. For crew members. We each wear one when we dock. She stayed quiet. I had one made for you, he added. Ilari hesitated. But I already have a name. Mason nodded. Yes, but now you have one that means something. He handed it to her. It read, Ilari Valen, Honor Crew, Rustwing. She ran her finger over it slowly. Valen? It means unchained. In Old Earth Latin, Mason said. It also means you earned your place. Ilari felt her chest tighten. No one had ever given her a name. The slave traders had only given her numbers. Her real name, Ilari, was a memory from her mother. But now, someone had given her something more. "Thank you," she whispered. Mason smiled. "You've earned it." Later, the crew gathered in the common room. A strange silence filled the space. Not fear, not anger. Respect. Juno stood up and held a datapad. "We took a vote," she said. "And it's official. Ilari's now listed as full crew, with voting rights, with shares." Rek added, "And your own room. Not a bunk, a room." Ilari blinked. "Why? Are you doing this?" Juno stepped forward. "Because you saved us twice, and because you didn't have to," Rek muttered, "and because Mason would kick our tails if we said no." Everyone laughed. Even Ilari. It was the first real laugh she had in years. But peace never lasted long. Hours. Later, the ship received a deep space message, encrypted and old. Juno stared at the console. "It's from a Terran diplomat, high-ranking." Mason frowned. "We haven't spoken to Earth in years." Juno played the message. A serious voice filled the room. "Captain Mason, this is Commander Thalor, Terran Fleet Intelligence. We need to speak about your passenger, Ilari. Her presence has reached the Council, and so have her memories." Ilari froze. "We believe she carries data locked in her brain, knowledge from the lost codex of Solarith. If true, she may be the last, linked to pre-alliance history. You must bring her to Terra immediately." The message ended. The crew looked at her. No one spoke. "What's the codex?" Mason asked gently. Ilari's voice shook. "It's a memory record. My people had it inside us. Passed through blood, songs, dreams. They say it holds the first map of the stars and the last secret of creation. Is it real? I don't know. But if it is, then it's inside me." Later that night, Ilari sat alone in her new room. The name tag rested on her table. Honor Crew. But what if the Terran Council didn't want her for who she was, but only for what she carried? Could she trust them? Could she trust herself? Mason knocked once before walking in. "I don't want to go to Earth," Ilari said quickly. "Not if they just want to study me, or use me." "You don't have to go," Mason said. "But maybe you should. Maybe the answers are there, and maybe they're not ready for you. But you're ready for you." Ilari looked up at him. "Will you come with me?" Mason didn't even hesitate. "Always." The next day, the Rustwing changed course. Not to run, not to hide, but to take one girl, once sold for nothing, back to the center of the galaxy. This time, not as a forgotten life, but as someone with a name, a voice, a future. The worth of one life, the Earth Council chambers floated high above the blue planet, surrounded by rings of silver defense drones. It was the safest place in human space, and the most powerful. The hour, Rustwing approached slowly under escort. Inside, Ilari stood beside Mason, watching the planet grow larger through the window. "I never thought I'd be flying towards something," she said softly. "Only away." Mason smiled. "That's because for the first time you're going forward." When they landed, a group of Terran officers waited at the platform. They wore dark uniforms and unreadable faces. One of them stepped forward. "Commander Thalor, the man from the message." "Ilari Valen," he said. "Welcome to Terra. We request your presence at the Central Memory Core. It is believed your ancestral link may unlock a piece of lost history." Mason stepped in front of her. "She's not a test subject." Thalor nodded. "She's not. She's a guest. And if what she carries is real, she may be the galaxy's most valuable mind." The chamber was cold, filled with glowing rings and humming scanners. Ilari sat in the center as a neural link gently touched her temples. "Think of your home," a soft voice said through the system. "Think of what was passed to you." She closed her eyes and remembered. The wind on crystal, trees, the songs of her elders, the stars drawn in golden dust, the voice of her mother whispering stories of the star path, an ancient trail left by the first explorers of the universe. A bright flash filled the room. The computers lit up. Memory match, confirmed. The codex was real, and it lived in her. Outside the chamber, chaos erupted. Council members argued. News feeds exploded. She must be protected. She must be studied. She could change everything. Inside, Ilari just sat quietly staring at her hands. She didn't feel powerful. She felt small. Afraid. Mason walked in. You okay? She shook her head. They don't see me. They see what I carry. A tool, not a life. Mason knelt in front of her. Then remind them. The next day, the council held an emergency session. Leaders from every species gathered in one chamber. And then, Ilari walked in. No chains, no collar. Wearing her Rustwing crew tag with pride, she stood before them, voice steady. You call me rare, you call me valuable, but a year ago you wouldn't even pay one credit for me. I was trash, forgotten, thrown away. She looked around the room. But one human saw me. Not for what I could be, but for what I already was. She touched her chest. A person. There was silence. Then murmurs. Then applause. Mason stood in the back, arms crossed, smiling. In the weeks that followed, things changed. The council offered Ilari full protection. Her memories were copied but not owned. She chose what to share and what to keep. Other survivors from her species were found. They were offered homes, names, futures. And through it all, Ilari stayed with the Rustwing crew. She chose them, not because she had to, but because they were her first real family. One night, as the Rustwing soared quietly through a glowing nebula, Mason brought Ilari a small case. What's this? She asked. A gift, he said. From Earth. Inside was a medal, for courage beyond worlds. She held it in her hands, speechless. You saved more than a ship, Mason said. You reminded the galaxy of something they forgot. What? He smiled. That one life, any life, can be worth everything.